right, today's episode of the Lebanon Star, I am with a great friend and someone who has impacted my life greatly and is a true star in Lebanon. It's Mr. Kevin Schwieger. But before we introduce you, we also should be doing a episode with your wife together because Kim is also a star in Lebanon. Yeah, but today's episode is specifically about Kevin Schwieger.
Yes.
I'll be sure to tell her. I'll remind her.
Yeah, she'll appreciate that.
And I know her enough that she never wants to be the star. So, Kevin, you're here today, and I've known you from a neighbor, known you from ministry. Some of the people here in Lebanon that may be watching our show may not even know that they were impacted by ministries that you set up. Upward Basketball. If you played Upward Basketball, Kevin was key to get Upward Basketball set up in Lebanon. You have been a pastor. You have been a friend. You've been a missionary. You've been a crazy bike rider. You've been a bull rider. But my description of Kevin in my mind is I see you at the bottom of an escalator to heaven, encouraging people to get on the escalator. Because you are a true encourager. You're always encouraging people. You're encouraging people to get on the escalator. And I know you're saying, man, the view up there is awesome. And so that's my interpretation of Kevin. But we want you to tell us a little bit about Kevin Schwieger.
Well, you've been a great friend as well as Amy. Yeah, we've done life together in Lebanon for over 30 years. Going back to our kids being taught.
I mean, I taught Kevin and Kim were parents of mine. I taught the two kids, and blessed to be able to do that. So I've known Kevin. As
I can imagine Logan being an art student. Sorry.
Ready? I remember Logan being like perfect, actually. So we've gone back, and as John introduced you, one thing that I notice about you is, and your family, is your humbleness. Yep. That's a piece that, to me, that's a word that I would always use to describe your family. You're a humble family that doesn't want to take credit for all the amazing things that you have impacted in our community, and all the amazing and all the people and students and kids that you've impacted. Is a humbleness which makes to me feel as though that's why you're such a star, is because that humbleness drives you to doing the things that are just so passionate about, that's truly in your heart to do. So
I've always been a target versus tool kind of guy, in the way that illustration means to me that my target remains unchanged, and that is to introduce people to a loving creator God, to possibly have a relationship with him and his son. Well, that target never ever changes. The tool can be whatever. And it could be basketball, it could be archery, it could be whatever. In this time of my life, it's hiking with those who can't hike themselves.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Luke 5 Adventures.
Yeah. So for the 9 years you mentioned, been in some
type of ministry.
Yeah, some type of ministry, whether it's missionary, Campus Crusade, Athletes in Action, or associate pastor of Lebanon Presbyterian Church, where I worked with you, to the 9 years leading up to this Luke 5 story. I was on staff as associate pastor with Grace Chapel there in Mason. And so again, target versus tool, just doing creative things to draw people to God. And but I'm an adventurer as well. Love everything.
You are more than an adventurer.
Outdoorsman. I love the outdoors. I love hiking, backpack stuff. So this story goes back to the late summer, early fall 2019, so just over 6 years ago. And I had come back from a particularly inspiring hike at River Gorge, and was all anxious to tell people about this new trail I found and all these epic sights and sounds that I had experienced. And so I walk into church that next Sunday morning.
And Kevin, before you share that, that's not easy to do, because you've seen an unbelievable amount of sites, places, and so for you to turn around and being wowed, it had to be the Holy Spirit turning around and wowing you a little bit.
Red River Gorge is
beautiful.
An awesome place. I mean, it's kind of our closest thing we'll ever come to, but there's places in that in that region that are just crazy and deep crevasses and all. Anyway, so I walked into church that next Sunday morning, anxious to tell people about it. Well, the first person that I encountered was this older lady named Debbie. She's in a wheelchair from a car accident decades ago. And we would talk every Sunday morning, just a really, really sweet lady. And so I walked up to Debbie, and I almost said, "Debbie, you should have seen."
Ooh.
And in the moment, and of course in hindsight, I know the Holy Spirit held my tongue in that moment. But in that moment, it just felt really inappropriate and awkward to share all this excitement about something that she could never, ever experience.
Yeah.
And so at Luke 5 Adventures, we affectionately refer to that as the conversation that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have that 2-second war in your head, like should I, shouldn't I, should I, should, you know, and it lasts only that long, but the no, you shouldn't won out in that moment. So, but we went on to talk about other things like we did every Sunday. And so I went home, and that non-conversation just haunted me for the days after that, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I began to think, okay, this is not cool. Like, somehow, some way, there has to be a way that we can get people
to engage
like Debbie to places where I've
Yes.
been. And I was not talking about the nice little city park with the mulch trail. I was talking about
Although there are a lot of those, but
epic
yes.
places. And so I just got on the laptop and just started looking and Googling off-road devices and this, and it was a really frustrating search early on because there's adaptive equipment for every sport you could even name, from sailing to kayaking to skiing or whatever
and
it
everything.
is,
Yeah.
except for just regular old hiking in the woods. And I couldn't understand, so I just kept looking and looking and looking, and finally found this piece of equipment that's manufactured in France, and even 6 years later, they are one of only 2 companies in the entire world that make anything like that. And so I made a few phone calls and raised the $5,000 to buy one and had it shipped over. So a few days before Christmas 2019, so I'm coming up on our 6th year anniversary of the first hike, I was able to go to Debbie in her assisted living place there in Mason and said, "Debbie, let's go for a hike." And she didn't believe me at first, and I showed her a couple of videos from the company's website, and I said, no, let's. And she said, like, don't pull my leg here because that would be mean. I was like, no, let's go for a hike. So a few days before Christmas, 2019, we took her to Cedar Creek, and we were down in the creek bed fossil hunting and up and over fallen trees that were 3 feet off the ground, and that long suspension bridge is there at the Horseshoe Falls, and just absolutely rocked her world.
Oh, I bet.
And
Yeah.
it rocked our world.
Because you could do it.
Because we were part of that experience for her. She said to me, I've just resigned myself to the fact that until I die and get my glorified body, I will never, ever, ever, ever again be able to go out and experience the trail or the whatever. And so, you know, thinking about it being in her shoes is dramatic, but also thinking about it being the one who's helping to make that possible is equally impactful. So that was the start. So that winter we did a couple more hikes here and there as we would have random warm days, and we found people that kind of in our sphere that had mobility challenges. And then COVID hit and shut everything down. And then coming out of that period, so we're talking now late spring, early summer of 2020, I get a call from a lady from Children's Hospital in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And she said, "Hey, I'm a part of our physical therapy department, and we have this program where we try to get kids who have come through the therapy department out into recreational opportunities in the community."
Had she heard of you?
Well, she had. One of the ladies from our church who has a child affected by disability had taken a flyer down
To the hospital.
to
the
therapy.
hospital.
So
Okay.
that
Wow.
made its way around some, anyway, so she called me and she said, one of the programs we do is an 8-week hiking series in collaboration with Cincinnati Parks Foundation every fall. But there's a certain percentage of those kids with mobility challenges that they cannot participate. Would you come alongside and make it possible for those kids? And of course, I'm a very ready, fire, aim kind of guy. I say yes to everything, and then I back up and hurry up and try to figure out how to accomplish yes. So I said, oh yeah, by all means. So then I had to make a bunch more phone calls and order a couple more pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
But that fall, 2020, we did 120 hikes with the kids from Children's Hospital. And that, I like to say that when the big dog in town does something and puts their stamp of approval on it, then all the little dogs want to play. And in Cincinnati, Children's Hospital is the big dog.
Yes.
And so I started getting calls from all over the region, from group homes and other disability organizations, from the counties surrounding here and their boards of disability. And they were all saying, hey, could you help us? Could you help us? Could you help us? And that was the impetus that just exploded this thing.
Yeah.
And so that was the fall of 2020. Spring, around May or so of 21, then that next spring, I got a call from a lady who introduced herself as Heather Sales, and I am one of the producers of the 700 Club with Christian Broadcasting Network, which is an iconic program that is worldwide. And she said, I heard about what you're doing and would love to send a film crew out to Cincinnati to do a story, which they did in June of 21. Well, that story is broadcast all across the country and the world. Well, then I started getting these calls from all over the place saying, hey, I saw that story. What would it look like for us to do that in our neck of the woods? And that further. So God was just exponentially, and we were just pinching ourselves going, what just happened? All we wanted to do is take Debbie hiking, and now so then we had to hurry up and figure out legally and logistically and practically how that all would how do we replicate, how do we train remotely so that it's safe and standards and all the legal stuff, and it's been crazy. So
you mean you didn't start this concept and idea with an end goal in mind?
Well, I tend to go from 0 to 100. Really, Kim, speaking of her, she's always I was like, slow down. You need to. Speaking of COVID, that whole thing was actually a silver lining for us because it forced us to slow down and get all of that in place, and the 501c3 and the insurance and the legalities and the training and
all that
policies and procedures and safety stuff. And just like God does seemingly every time, he was providing for us before we even knew that we needed whatever that was. And one of those provisions was a lady in our church who was just really, really experienced in the world of disability, and especially in seating and transferring and safety kind of stuff. Well, she had a ministry in El Salvador and was spending disability ministry down there, and was spending 6 months of the year every year down there. Well, because of COVID, she couldn't
do that.
And so she came alongside me and she said, hey, Kevin, I know you. Before you hurt somebody, just let me teach you. And let me put out all of that safety stuff into place. And I said, oh, thank you so much, because...
What an unanswered prayer. I mean, she just came. Yeah.
A prayer to, or an answer
prayer.
Unprayed prayer.
Yeah.
She just was, and so we owe a huge gratitude to her for setting this up on a solid foundation. Leaving it up to me, I would have been, oh yeah, throw them in the chair, they'll be fine, because I didn't have a background in all of this. So fast forward to today, and we've done well over 2,000 hikes in the last 5+ years in 20-some states in 3 countries, and we have 11 now chapters, Luke 5 Adventures chapters, that are spread around the country.
And are the chapters set up like a franchise? How do the chapters work?
Question.
If you think about, and this is the way I describe it, if you think about a line, and on this very far extreme, you have franchise model like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, where you buy in with a lot of money, and then you're dictated every single thing you do. You can't change the recipe of the Big Mac, right?
Yeah.
On the other far extreme, you have, oh yeah, just call yourselves Luke 5 and just do whatever, we don't really care. Well, don't want that. and I didn't want
With the other extreme.
either. And so our model is kind of closer to the franchise model. We call it a licensee model. So each of these chapters sign a licensing agreement that talks about the non-negotiables, like you have to operate under a 501c3 and have adequate liability insurance and adherence to policies and procedures and safety stuff and logo and all of that kind of stuff. And then beyond that, they're all financially autonomous. They're run as ministries out of their local church, wherever that is. And then they can add their own personality and culture to where they hike and who they hike and how often and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's how it goes. We have 11 of those now.
But now, when you said the numbers, does that include those groups? Or is it okay?
We're at 2,200 hikes, but I'd say because all of that has been ramping up, I'd say probably 80% of those are Cincinnati-based.
Yeah. Now, in Cincinnati and in the area, you have some volunteer capabilities. So I know there's things called Sherpas, and it's been on my bucket list for a long time. And one of these days, Kevin, I've told you I will do a Sherpa. So the Sherpas are the ones who are actually carrying this piece of equipment. It's called Rosie.
Yeah.
And is there any reason why it's called Rosie?
Yeah. In fact, the Sherpa, of course, that's named after the Sherpas in the Himalayas that help people up Mount Everest. So all of our volunteers are called Sherpas, no matter what you do. If you're hanging back at base camp, or if we have prayer Sherpas, we have financial Sherpas. But this piece of equipment, picture, if you could see the picture of my shirt.
Here we go.
Well, we'll include a picture, too, for the audience.
So I describe it as part unicycle, part wheelchair, and part two-ended rickshaw. And so by its definition, you have to have at least two. We never send it out with fewer than 4 people because we want people on the sides. But because of the one wheel, that it'll go anywhere I can go, except maybe a ladder or a cliff or something.
Oh.
But we've had it now 3 times. This coming, in 2 days, we're flying back out to Arizona to do our 4th trip to the bottom of the Grand Canyon with a full-time wheelchair user. 2 of those, our first one and this one coming up, are Lebanon folks. Brian Berger.
Okay,
Nicole
Brian Berger.
Yeah, so he
with
was our first.
Nicole's
a teacher.
Nicole's a teacher.
At the junior high.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So what
Brian to the bottom is Kevin and Michelle Moeller.
Yeah.
They're also from Lebanon.
Yes.
And we're taking him next week to the bottom.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's
so amazing.
We have some award-winning documentaries on those first 3 trips.
Yeah, and I'll put some links to those. You shared with me one of those.
They're
and
incredible.
Yeah.
But you asked about Rosie. So the company that makes it's called Jolette. It's French, so they probably say Jolet or something. But there's not a model name for this piece of it. They just call it the one-wheel Jolette. And so it was only after a few times of me saying, hey, we're going to take that chair, cycling, off-roady thing out in the woods. And Kim said, dude, you just call it something. Give it a name. And so the older lady I was referencing, Debbie, her last name is Rosen. And so we honored her.
Cool.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
So yes.
So we to date, when I first called the company, they have a guy in Denver who's he's the exclusive import guy for that company. So I can't just call the French company and order one. I have to go through this guy in Denver. Before I called him in late 2019, he had sold 4 of those in the United States. Since then, we've purchased over 40 of them.
Wow.
From him for our chapters. And we have 10 of them here in Cincinnati, and then our other chapters have between 1 and 4 of their own.
And our audience listening, since they're there, so what does a Rosie cost?
A lot more than it used to. Our first one was like $4,500. Now they're closer to $9,000.
Yeah. So if you're here and this video is starting to inspire you about one of the things you can do is give to Luke 5 Adventures, you can actually buy Rosie. Yeah. And so I want to encourage you, listening to the audience, is if you feel like you want to give in some way and God's got a little tug on your heart, that may be a great opportunity for you.
Giving, I covenanted from day one. I would much rather spend all my time going to find money than to have a conversation with a family about how much it's going to cost to go. We do about 300 or so hikes a year here in Cincinnati. One of the really cool, the world of disability is almost 90% single parent in the United States, almost 90% unchurched. And that's because of the pressures of life. Everything is hard. To go anywhere is hard. The stares and the comments, and we had families early on say, we've just stopped dreaming because dreaming
losing total hope.
Yeah, dreaming is too painful if it's impossible. So we just shut down the dream.
Yes.
Because their families, their friends were always coming back, and that conversation that never happened, except these conversations do happen when their families come back from vacation and their friends, we visited, man, you should have seen. Well, they get sick and tired of hearing you should have seen when we can't see. And so they just shut down all of
the
that.
feeling that we'll never see.
Well, so I had families telling me this over and over and over again. But after a couple of years of us doing our local hiking, those same families were coming back to me saying, you know what, we've started dreaming again because now we know with you guys and with this equipment that things are possible.
Things are possible.
Yeah. And so we started a program that we call Hike of a Lifetime, which is loosely our version of Make-A-Wish.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a life-ending thing, but it needs to be some kind of a compelling story for that family. And so these are bigger. Grand Canyon, Pikes Peak, we've done 3 times now. Israel, we've taken 2 people on Holy Land tours to Israel. This coming May, we did an event locally here with the Angelman Syndrome Society, and they did a social media post, and a lady in Florida saw that post and reached out to me, and she said, my daughter has Angelman Syndrome, some mobility issues. She's 18 years old, and she proceeded to tell me this story that 2 years ago, or coming up a year and a half ago, in May the 6th of 2024, her husband, who was in his early 50s, and their teenage son, and then the grandfather, so it was a three-man generation deal. They wanted to go to Zion National Park and climb this certain really popular hike up to a place called Scout Landing. So they got up to Scout Landing, the 3 of them, and the dad had a seizure and ultimately led to a fatal heart attack up on the mountain. And there were dozens of first responders and park personnel trying to resuscitate, they were not able. Meanwhile, she's back in Florida. Somebody up there had a satellite phone, but it would only blurt out like 5-second messages. So she's in Florida and gets this message, we tried to save him, but we couldn't. And she's like, what do you, So the drama playing out in that family. Well, anyway, she reached out to me and said, would you guys be able to take me and my daughter to that place?
Wow.
Where?
On May 6th of this upcoming year. And she said, I want to be there at 2:30 p.m. on May 6th. And so, of course, we said, yeah, absolutely. And so we've been raising money with her and on our own with grants and other donors to make that possible for her family. And so, yeah, that's going to happen. And I've been on the phone with the National Park there at Zion and their public affairs person. And they're going to come out with some of the first responders that were part of that. And
get goosebumps just thinking of
really,
just
really
this,
emotional.
having you talk about it.
Yeah. So all of those things, all of it takes a lot of money. Not going to pass it along to the families, so it has to come from somewhere. So we are funded 100% through personal donations and grants that we're able to achieve. So.
Kevin, I remember sitting back. One of the things we got to do was take kids on these bike trips. And, I was biking quite a bit then, but and I know a lot of the kids were, but you push people to the limits. That's been a gift that you have, because when people break through limits, their hope comes back. Their dreams come back. They can inspire. I know you've used Bible verses, on those specific bike trips where we would travel sometimes 20 miles, sometimes 100 miles in one day, and you'd put different scriptures, on people's bikes, and those would carry people through. And some of them are iconic, scriptures, but they do carry people through, and they do give hope. And that's one of the things that you've been able to do in every position and every place you do. And now you're getting to do this on a global level. Because my understanding is there's also some international possibilities coming up here.
Yeah, we have a chapter that's developing. I've always believed that we have our 3 our three sides of us are mental, spiritual, and physical sides, the mind, body, spirit triangle. And I've always thought that if you stress out two of those, then the third one becomes kind of raw and teachable. So that's what you're talking about, John, is that when you stress out the mental and the physical, blood, sweat, and tears, you're working super hard, and then that spirit becomes kind of teachable.
Open. Yeah.
We have a spiritual theme for each of our seasons, and for this 2025 season, it comes from Proverbs 11:25 that talks about a generous man will prosper, and he who refreshes others will also be refreshed himself. And that's what our Sherpas experience is when you serve and when you give, then God uses that to refresh you as well. One of the nuances that we've discovered from our hikers, in our terminology, the hiker is the person in the chair, whether it's an 18-month-old or a 99-year-old. But one of the young lady who's our most frequent flyer, she's probably been on 75 hikes with us. I mean, we do life with her. And she's one of the ones that we took to Israel, one of the ones we've hiked in Rocky Mountain National Park and Grand Canyon with. But she told me one time, we were in Rocky Mountain National Park and climbed or hiked up to the top of one of their 10+ thousand peaks called Deer Mountain. If you ask Mary about that experience, she says, I hiked up to the top of Deer Mountain. She does not say, my friends carried me up to the top of Deer Mountain. And that's a nuance, but it's a really, really important one. So one of the beauties of what we're doing is that we're hiking with. It's not a charity case in which we view, you poor person living with a disability, we're going to carry you. No, we're hiking with you. And the other, I think that, it's comical to me that looking back, there wasn't any big grand plan for this to do anything significant. I mean, at the beginning, and it's just turned out that way. I've learned so much, but on the surface, we're hiking, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that 99.999% of the Earth's surface, God's creation, is outside the context of the room and the sidewalk. But there are so many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, through no fault of their own, that are limited to the 0.0001%.
Yes, exactly.
With no opportunity to go see the 99. And it is a huge difference between, hey, I can see that mountain in a picture or from my car window, versus I'm up on top of the mountain or down in Mammoth Cave.
Symbolically on top of that mountain. That's...
Speaking of Brian Berger, their first experience with us was in Mammoth Cave in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And their whole family, so they have 3 teenage kids now. And we're down 200 feet down deep in the cave. At Mammoth Cave, there's what they call the accessibility tour, which is actually really lame.
Yeah.
You go down in an elevator and you open up into a room and you can say, okay, I'm in the cave. But that's completely different than I'm navigating my way for 2 hours through the caverns of the cave. So we're down there, and at one point there was a really cool rock, and Nicole said, hey, could we just stop here and take a family photo? And even after a couple of thousand hikes, sometimes I miss the significance of something. So yeah, sure, whatever, we're not in any hurry here. Yeah. And then I stopped and I thought, okay, in what crazy, impossible scenario would this family of 5 people, one who's in a wheelchair, be 200 feet below the surface of the earth taking a family photo for their Christmas card? These families live in a divide and conquer. Hey, we'll go visit the cool thing, but you take the kids and I'll stay back here and wait.
Yeah.
So, all of us are God's children. And the 3 of us, if I want to go do whatever, I just go do it. But if I'm Brian Berger...
It's taken for granted. You just do it.
So some of God's children get to stay back in the counselor's office at school while all the other classmates go on the really cool field trip, and then wait there for all the kids to come back and tell stories
about how wonderful it
was. Oh man, it was cool, we did this, and you should have been there.
Yeah.
Some of God's children get to go to a really, really cool park with their family and hang out at the visitor center while the rest of the family goes to visit, and the same thing, wait for them to come back and show pictures of what you missed.
Yeah.
Some of God's children get to watch their husband or wife or brother or sister pack their backpack with excitement about going on the Appalachian Trail, and then wait to see pictures and stories about what they missed. And to us, that is not cool. That is
not acceptable.
Yeah.
Just not acceptable.
You know, Kevin, it's interesting because you get to make this happen. And yes, it's all the Sherpas. Yes, it's everybody else coming alongside. Yes, it's God pushing this. But the concept and idea that was laid into you from the Holy Spirit in that one moment has grown into such a beautiful thing. And I see a lot of things later, and I'm curious because you have visions and you cast visions as a leader. You have always done that. But this is something that's not a vision cast. This was something that God just make happen. But I'm curious, do you have some visions for what this ministry is going to look like in the next couple of years? I'm just curious of what they are, and maybe hikes that you would love to see, try to make happen for people.
Intentional, or we've chosen, like I said, there's adaptivities, and people are constantly saying, hey, this skiing thing, I did that one. We've just really, really decided we're going to stay in our lane of hiking with those who can't hike themselves, and very niche kind of a thing. Part of the explosion of this was that Luke 5 is unique in that space, and I use unique in the literal definition of the term of like no other. So we are the only ones in the country, maybe the world, that are doing this to this degree. There's some smaller outfits that go on hikes or use that equipment for doing whatever, but so our vision is just to grow more chapters. I mean, I would love to see a chapter in every state and in a couple of countries. I learned a really cool, you've referenced just vision and God doing different. When we were in Israel, we visited Shiloh, which is the site of the first permanent temple, tabernacle. And you can visit the site, you can see the debris pile or where there's still remains of that and whatever. And our guide, who I'm actually on his board now, Biblical Israel Ministry and Tours, told us about a Hebrew word called Hineni. And when we were he was telling the story of the tabernacle built, and it goes back to the story of God calling out, hello, are you there? And in the dream, he was like, thinking that the priest was calling him. Well, the word that he responded with was Hineni, which means here I am.
Here I am. Yeah.
But our English language, once again, fails us completely in the depth of what that word means. So it means more than, here I am. It means I'm ready. You say jump, I'll say how high. I'm ready for whatever.
I'm present.
Here I am.
Here I am.
Use me.
And whatever.
I'm ready.
So Kevin, as you're telling me this story, part of my story is sitting on the top of a cenote with you, answering that question and jumping off into a cenote for part of it. I mean, that's just that's just part of my God story, and where God said, "Trust me," and it was because I said that. So you put shivers because you didn't know. I mean, I know you knew that was a big impact moment for me.
Except what it said how high it was, like how deep.
How deep, and coming off of back surgery and etc. Yeah, but
so I think the lesson for me is that. People say, well, why does God use that person or use that person or that, whatever? And I'm just convinced that God can do extraordinarily, way more than we could ever dream and imagine if we have that attitude of, here I am, just...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Instead of putting limits on or exclusions or something, if God says, hey, I have something for you, and you say, well... in calling the disciples, they all had an excuse. Well, I have to go back and do my nets, or I have to go bury my father, or whatever. Those who just said, okay, here I am.
Here I am.
that's when he can just open the floodgates.
So since you're bringing that up, Kevin, I want to give our viewers again some opportunities. If God's calling you, say, here you are. You may have some opportunities, and there are opportunities. So how can people help your organization if they're being called from this message?
Well, we're in constant need of volunteers. So we have hiking events 2 times a week, every week from April through the end of October, and then sometimes during the winter time. And every one of those, we need like 20 people a week in, a week out, every week. So we have this database of probably 500 or 600 people in the Cincinnati area that respond as they're able. So you go to our website, luke5adventures.org, using the numeral 5, and go to the Cincinnati chapter page. You fill out the volunteer application, and that just puts you in that big database. And then weekly, we send out an email that just says, here are the upcoming 4 or 5 hikes. Click here
If you're available,
And people just respond as they're able. So constantly in need of Sherpas, volunteers. And like I said before, they don't have to be on the trail. So if you're saying, hey, I have a bad back or bad knees or whatever, we have things that you can do that are not actually on the trail. Constantly in need of money, of course. That makes things possible. But yeah, also I guess I never really told about the name Luke 5.
Well, I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask about that. So we're going to break it. So I'm going to end up segmenting a little some of the things. So you got an upcoming hike for the Christmas Cave.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the Christmas Cave hike.
Yeah, the Christmas Cave.
Because Amy's doing this one, right? Maybe?
Well, share with me, because I'm very interested in knowing what that even really means, and where is that, and all. Yeah.
Okay, so Kevin, tell us
this
about
is,
the Christmas Cave.
Out in the middle of nowhere. The closest town, I think the address is Minford, Ohio, but they're 20 miles north of Portsmouth, so it's 2 hours east of here. And I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, this Christian family, purchased this 100 acres.
Okay.
And below the 100 acres is an abandoned gravel mine. And this gravel mine supplied the gravel for all the roads in southeastern Ohio during the World War II kind of era. And then they abandoned that mine and sat empty for decades. Well, they've purchased that and have turned that abandoned gravel mine into a ministry. So at Christmas time, it's like a cave, but it's actually a mine. But it's a mile walk through, and it tells the Christmas story. And so churches from all over the region put up displays, trees and music, and then there are these animatronic displays and
incredible.
Each one telling the story as you go around.
That's why I said, Amy, you may want to Sherpa on this event.
It is unbelievably cool.
I can't even imagine. I mean, just sounds incredible.
And for someone who never would have the opportunity to do that,
it's
that's
not accessible a bit. So
yes.
It's all gravelly in there and dark, and you have to climb up this gravel hill just to get to it. And then they have food trucks outside, and it's a ministry. It's all free, donation or whatever. They have 30,000 people a year from all over the region, multiple states that come to see it. It takes about 45 minutes to go through. We go 4 times a year and just help people with mobility challenges make it through there.
And I know you're looking for Sherpas for that event coming up. So again, if you're feeling called, you want to experience Christmas in a little bit of a different way.
If you want to see what that's all about, see pictures or whatever, their organization is actually called White Gravel.
Okay.
Their Facebook page and Instagram and stuff.
I'm going to definitely, yeah.
It's very, very cool.
All right. So Kevin, let's go back a little bit. Where did the name Luke 5 Adventures come from?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have comical conversations on the trail frequently where people come up to me knowing that I'm started it, and somebody will point me out, and they'll come up. So are you Luke? And it gives me an opportunity to say, well, funny you should ask, but let me tell you who Luke is. So obviously it's a biblical reference. The 5th chapter of Luke includes the story of the group of friends with the paralytic friend, and they wanted to take him to go to a nearby house where Jesus was speaking, and they got there, and the house was so crowded around that they couldn't get in. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall and see this conversation, because that group of friends, I think, were probably a lot like me, where one of them said, hey, I have an idea. There's a staircase over there. Let's climb up on top of the house. Maybe we could see down. And then they get up there, and they can't see down. So
I don't think that person was a lot like you. That person was
I
you,
don't
maybe.
know if it was the same guy or one of the other friends. Hey, I have an idea. Should we bust a hole in the roof and then we can lower him down? So they ended up lowering. Verse 19, at least in the NIV, says that they lowered him down right in front of Jesus. So that group of friends was creative and undeterred and relentless and would stop at nothing to help their friend to go see something amazing that he could not see on his own. And that's what we do.
And that's what you're doing. You're turning around. You're not lowering people. You're lifting them up now to see Jesus. And it's a pretty cool thing that you get to do.
Our first trip to the canyon with Brian, and we had these two filmmakers that were along doing the documentary, and we were down at the bottom the morning before we were going to start heading back up, and we were just sitting around in the camp. And he was asking me some questions, doing a little bit of an interview, and he asked, "What's your favorite part of Luke 5 Adventures and what you do?" And I didn't have my elevator speech answer to that at that point. And so I was him-hawing around, well, it's kind of like this, and it's kind of like, well, I like this, and I was describing some stuff, but doing a really poor job of it. And he stopped me, and he said, "Wait a second, stop there. Let me help you with what you're trying to explain." He says, "I think what you're explaining is that it's extravagant kindness." And I said, "Yeah, that's it in a nutshell." Because we've decided that I think for me, the links that we go to just so that one person can have an extraordinary experience.
I remember sitting back with Kevin as this thing called Random Acts of Kindness. That was a unbelievable ministry approach that you really changed a lot of people. And I'm sitting here as God asked you to make a rack, and you have. And it's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Just this week, Monday and Tuesday, we did a 2-day hike with an older lady to the Hocking Hills area. Mm-hmm. And she has lived with cerebral palsy her whole life, and her health is going downhill quickly, and she had to have her neck fused, and so she can't turn her head anymore, and she can't drive, and her service dog died, and life for her has just become really, really hard. And she said, "I always wanted to go to Hocking Hills, and even if we wait until the spring, I don't know if I'm going to be able to." And we had a friend of hers, a donor, step up and say, "Hey, don't worry about the expense. I'll pay for everything, the cabin." And so we were able to just go spend 2 just incredible, awesome days with her, blessing her, and drop everything and go with Marty to Hocking Hills.
Yeah.
And so the extravagant kindness, and it's not me, it's like there are volunteers that are taking vacation days, and it's
pretty cool.
It's pretty amazing what, despite what people think, there are some pretty amazing people out there who do love and do care and do want to be a part of something incredible.
I have a feeling some of our audience is probably out there thinking those same things. And so I think as we wrap up, Kevin, I think one of the encouragements I want to have is to our audience to saying, look, if you want to turn around, put your arms up and say, "Here I am." This is a great ministry to jump into and literally turn around and be that person. And I think you'll change. I want to encourage you to do that. I love this ministry, love Kevin's heart, known Kevin's heart. So you guys want to grow in your faith. This is an unbelievable opportunity. So Kevin, again, I want to just thank you for pouring into this community, but God's, poured it way beyond this community on the things you do. And I'm anxious to have you on the show again somewhere down the road and to see what are the crazy things that God is doing. So just appreciate you.
This is a sundowner.
Kevin, I know you better than that. There is no sundowner for Kevin Schwieger.
I hope this continues and gets, this age. And I'm like, it's time to ramp it up.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. So a true Lebanon Star. Thanks, Kevin Schwieger.
Yes. Thank you all for joining us.
Yep.
What do you think?
Lost in your hometown.